Thank you, Rod, for the scripture, yes.
All right, if you want to follow along in your pew Bibles, it's on page 335. I'll be reading Joshua 4, and then Joshua 24, 14 through 15. When the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priest stood, and to carry them over with you and put them down at the place where you stay tonight." So Joshua called together the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe, and said to them, "Go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder, according to the number of tribes of Israelites, to serve as a sign among you. In the future, when your children ask you, 'What do these stones mean?' tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever." So the Israelites did as Joshua commanded them. They took 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, as the Lord had told Joshua. And they carried them over with them to their camp, where they put them down. Joshua set up the 12 stones that had been in the middle of the Jordan at the spot where the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant had stood, and they are there to this day. Now the priests who carried the Ark remained standing in the middle of the Jordan until everything the Lord had commanded Joshua was done by the people, just as Moses had directed Joshua. The people hurried over, and as soon as all of them had crossed, the ark of the Lord and the priests came to the other side while the people watched. The men of Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh crossed over, armed in front of the Israelites, as Moses had directed them. About 40,000 armed for battle crossed over before the Lord to the plains of Jericho for war. That day the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they revered him all the days of his life, just as they had revered Moses. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Command the priests carrying the ark of the testimony to come up out of the Jordan." So Joshua commanded the priests, "Come up out of the Jordan." And the priests came up out of the river carrying the ark of the covenant of the Lord. No sooner had they set their feet on dry ground than the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and ran at flood stage as before. On the 10th day of the first month, the people went up from the Jordan and camped at Gilgal on the eastern border of Jericho. And Joshua set up at Gilgal the 12 stones they had taken out of the Jordan. He said to the Israelites, "In the future, when your descendants ask their fathers, 'What do these stones mean?' tell them, 'Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. The Lord your God did to the Jordan just what he had done to the Red Sea, when he dried it up until we had crossed over. He did this so that all the peoples of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God." And then page 369, 14 through 15. "Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your forefathers worshipped beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your forefathers served beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord."
Thank you. I was thinking about Memorial Day and what we do when the Joshua piece came up, and we just love to build memorials to remember, don't we? You see them all over the place, and we build them. So why is it that we forget so much? So often we forget. We build all these memorials, and we forget. They're all over the place. Human beings like to remember special things, don't they? And we do so in so many remarkably creative ways to remember things. And Americans are no different. Just think about places in Washington, D.C. alone. Jefferson Memorial, right? Lincoln Memorial, Roosevelt, the Washington Monument. People are remembered by monuments, statues, and huge obelisks that are built all over the place. And then think about war soldiers who died and that are remembered. World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and elsewhere in the country. We built memorials to tragic events, haven't we? The 9/11 Memorial, the Oklahoma City Memorial, Pearl Harbor. We have Memorial Garden right outside the window here, don't we? And it was inspired by a tragedy. It was inspired by a fire that claimed the lives of Leah, Sophia, and Harrison Wagner. But it also includes names of those who founded this community, who sacrificed, who worked hard, who were the saints of this community. They made a difference in our lives in this community. Thursday evening, I was with a bunch of folks that gathered at the corner of Center Street and Columbia Street. And they gathered to dedicate a huge 10,000-pound sofa, Brandon Aitken's called it. It's a bench, a memorial bench. And on it, hand-chiseled by other students, are the names of Kiana Davis, Kiara Phillips, Kyrell McDonald, Coney Welsh, Libby German, and Abigail Williams. We have built these memorials for a reason, haven't we? What's the reason we do it? So that we don't forget. Isn't that the idea? So that these people are not forgotten. So these events are not forgotten. So in addition to building things, we also set aside special times, don't we? Special times to remember someone who meant a lot to our experience as Americans. Washington, President Washington, President's Day, Lincoln, for example, in February. Martin Luther King in January. In July, we set aside a day to celebrate our independence. In November, we remember our veterans. And so we come to Memorial Day, a day to remember. I want to tell you a little story about a town in Victory Mills, New York, and Saratoga, right around Saratoga Springs. There's a monument called the Saratoga Monument, and it celebrates the decisive win by Americans over the British in 1777. And the Battle of Saratoga was fought during the Revolutionary War. And it's a majestic, it's an imposing, huge obelisk that goes up almost 155 feet in the air. Work started on it 100 years ago after the battle, and there's a staircase inside that allows you to go up inside, and I think there's 190 steps in there to go up to the top and oversee the battleground and the grand views from the surrounding areas. There's a guy named Sam Purden who lived nearby Saratoga Springs during his teen years. And I read a story about how he and his friends used to ride their bicycles to the monument, and he remembers climbing that staircase on different occasions during his teen years. He and his family moved to another state while he was still in high school. So a few years ago, he decided to take a vacation with his wife and children on their way to New England, and he detoured to show them the Saratoga Monument. He was looking forward to revisiting his boyhood spot, especially since none of his family had ever seen the Saratoga Monument. It was a hot day when they arrived, and they were bumping along in their old motorhome in which the air conditioner had quit. Everyone was sweaty and tired after several hours of long travel. The kids were seated in the vehicle and playing cards. When their dad urged them to get out and see the monument, they looked out the window and just glanced at it like it was just another moment, another monument, and went back to playing their cards. Purdum's wife told him to go ahead and have a look as she'd wait in the vehicle with the kids. She was more interested in where they were going to be camping that night and whether or not it would have a swimming pool so that the kids could have a place to swim. Somewhat deflated, Purdum says that he walked alone to that massive structure, consoling himself with the knowledge that at least he'd get to climb that staircase once again and view that surrounding area again. But no, what happened when he got to the door? he found that the door was locked. The park was closed for the day and had just closed a few minutes before they arrived. So while driving away, Sam Purdom thought about how no one in his family had looked at that monument for what it was intended to memorialize. To his kids, it was just another pile of stones like they had seen before. To his wife, it was an interruption to get the family ready for the night. To Purdom himself, the monument stood not for the brave soldiers that had died in 1777, but as a touchstone for him of the happy times that he remembered as a teenage kid. I wonder if those who had built that monument could have asked him and his family members what that monument meant to them. I think they'd have been pretty disappointed by their answers. Don't you? But this is what tends to happen to monuments in the passage of time. They become detached from the events that led to their creation. In fact, just think about Memorial Day itself for a minute. It's a day left to remember fallen soldiers who died for their country. Yet for many of us, many people, it's a day off work, it's a day to have barbecues or go shopping, it's another holiday. And each year, year after year, the legions that gather in cemeteries to honor the dead get smaller and smaller. Take a look at Joshua 4:4-7 that you heard Rob read, and it talks about a memorial. Then Joshua summoned the 12 men from the Israelites, who he appointed, one from each tribe. He said to them, "Pass on before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you take up a stone on his shoulder, one for each of the tribes of the Israelites, so that this may be a sign among you. When your children ask in time to come, 'What do those stones mean to you?' then you will tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off in front of the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the Israelites a memorial forever." The people of Israel are on their final leg out of slavery. They're on the final part of their journey into the promised land out of Egypt. And one final barrier stands in front of them. The Jordan River. The Jordan River. As soon as their feet touched the water, the river parted and it remained open while the entire tribe of Israel crossed through into the promised land. That was an event that was worth remembering, don't you think? Get your attention maybe? And God told Joshua to have one person, one man from each of the 12 tribes, take a stone, not just a little stone, a huge stone from the riverbed, carry it to the riverbank, to the new territory they had entered, and there to build a monument. "Come thou fount of every blessing." You heard that song many years, haven't you? "Now I raise my," what? Ebenezer, right? You know what Ebenezer is? Do you? It's a monument. That's what it is. Raise my Ebenezer. You raise your Ebenezer to commemorate what the Lord has done for you. Notice Joshua's closing words here. "So these stones shall be to the Israelites a memorial forever." Yeah, right. A memorial forever. Really? Like that's going to really happen? Maybe, predictably, subsequent generations of Israelites did not always care about the things of their ancestors and what their monuments symbolized. Like with Purdom and his family, nobody was asking him, "What do these stones mean?" The same trend continues today with our memorials and the way we treat our holidays that are about memory. As new generations come along, since they weren't part of the event or the factors that caused the building of that memorial that their grandparents or parents or great-grandparents built, it's common for the younger people not to give them the same value. They don't mean the same thing. And that certainly became a problem for Israel, didn't it? Despite the various monuments the people of one generation erected, the next generation always was less interested in the stones and what they represented. For some, they just became piles of rock. I want to give you a quiz. What inspired the Memorial Garden? I gave you a hint earlier. Huh? Do you know? Huh? The fire, the tragedy. What shape is on the floor of the Memorial Garden? Huh? Cross? Celtic cross. And there's one that's reflected right on the roof of the building right over that. Did you know there's another Celtic cross? Symbolizing Jesus, and a halo is what the Celtic cross stands for. You probably knew that too, I imagine. What do the three stones in the fountain represent?
3 lost.
Huh?
3 that were lost.
3 lives that were lost in the fire. To us, to the next generation, and to some people, they represent Father, Son, and Holy Spirit too. And the living water that flows out of that as well. For another generation, it may mean that. How many states are represented out there? 13. Did you know that? How many bricks? There's over 2,000 bricks. How many do you think are inscribed with people's names? 245. That's right. You're very good. I'm glad you did your homework to find out the meaning of what's going on with our monuments. Do that, because I know that you're interested. Here's the part I want you to catch. Joshua 4:6. In the future, when your children ask you, what do these stones mean? Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial of the people to Israel forever. God wanted the people to have a visual reminder of His mercy and of His power. So they would remember, so their children would remember, so their children's children would remember that God came through for the people of Israel in their journey to the promised land. God came through. About 12 years ago, I came to a roadblock in ministry, and I wasn't quite sure how exactly to proceed, and it was driving me crazy. And I was stuck. I was stuck on the banks of the Jordan, believe me. I didn't know which way I was going to do, which way to go, whether to give up or go on or what to do. I knew the dream and the vision that I had that God had given me for this event. I just didn't know how to get there. And I spent a week praying about it fervently, and a friend of mine said, why don't you go to one of the retreat centers for a couple of days? I did. And I came back. I spent a week, and then I spent the weekend. When I got home, the answer showed up in the form of an old, empty school building that somebody donated for me to use for this ministry. 3 days later, the community I was in approached me and said, we have an old, dilapidated church. It was a great shape, and we'll sell it to you for $1 for that ministry of outreach you're trying to do. Scooped that up in a minute. Went in that old school building, and I was able to purchase that church for $1. And suddenly I could see God's hand at work in my life. And I grabbed a can of spray paint that was in the gym of that old gymnasium of that school, and I painted a big red cross on the wall. And underneath it I wrote Psalm 9 verse 10. And you know what that verse says, right? For you, Lord, have not forsaken those who seek you. Countless times over the course of the last decade, I have thought about that red cross and the excitement that I painted that thing on the wall with. Every time I do and think of that, it reminds me of a time God came through for me in a big way. And it reminds me to stay faithful to the vision that God gives me. And of course, that's not the only time that God came through for me. He comes through in more ways and more times than I can ever count. And that cross on the wall is not the only reminder that I have of His goodness. My home, my office is full of little cards of special friends and photographs and wall hangings and special events and souvenirs of special days. And they remind me of the good people that God has brought into my life and those amazing events that He has given me in my life. How about you? How about you? Is there an area in your life where you could stop and stack some stones in honor of what God has done for you? I encourage you to create those visual reminders of His goodness and His mercy and His power. We have a tendency to forget, you see. We forget. We get so caught up in today's crisis that we fail to remember yesterday's miracle. Remembering how God provided for us yesterday ignites our faith. It inspires us to trust Him for tomorrow. Joshua may have hoped that the subsequent generations would ask, what do these stones mean? But in fact, many of the newcomers didn't bother. One of God's chief charges against the people of Israel was in Jeremiah 18:15. They have forgotten me. Now, before we complain about this failure to remember, let's acknowledge that it's probably not even reasonable to expect someone, something that commemorates a value in the last generation, to be appreciated in the next one, to have the same meaning that the event that was memorialized. They will change. The Father, Son, Holy Spirit, the stones are going to mean different things to different generations. But still, by ignoring history, by forgetting, we lose the benefits of learning from the past. That's terrible. That is not good. We benefit from knowing what we as a people on this earth have gone through and where we as a people of faith have been. As someone said, without knowing history, we are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. Now here's the key insight I want you to get. The meaning of past events can't be the same for us and for those who have lived through them. So our job is not to force our kids to bow at our memorials, but to do what we can to help them understand what they mean to us. We can help them see our pile of stones, both our literal and our figurative ones, as if not memorials, at least as milestones on the journey of humankind. We can help them do that. In other words, every time we build a memorial, we can think of what it will mean to this generation as well as to the generations in the future. There will be different things. But let me tell you, those secondary meanings have value as well to stimulate memory. Here's some things that a memorial can do. First, for the generation that was there, and then for the generation to come. It can celebrate heroes and happy events, and it can mourn tragic ones. Israel's 12 stones testified to the current generation that God helped and guided them to that generation. As a milestone to the next generation, it witnessed that people earlier were helped and gives them hope and faith that God will be faithful to them too. Lets them know they can be helped by God. We're helping the next generation be better, rise higher by teaching them. Do you see? A memorial can remind us of those who lived through an event and the terrible cost of war. As a milestone, it can cause future generations to do all that is possible to avoid bloodshed. And it reminds us of the cost of war, reminds them to avoid the cost of blood, to seek peace. A memorial can promote healing for people who were there and whose loved ones were there and were lost. Think, for example, about the Vietnam Memorial and the 9/11 Memorial. As milestones, they teach people that they can deal with emotional hurt and heartache, and they can move on and live. It can communicate that each age, each and every one of us, has significant things that call for courage and sacrifice. We need to be willing to step up and have courage and sacrifice. We don't do that as a nation or as a people very much anymore. And I'll tell you why. It's because we have forgotten that that's what these lives are built on. So this is a time of remembering. And it's a time also for decision. This is today's focus for today's reading from Joshua. Just as Joshua, now an old man, about to die, calls the people of Israel together to remember and decide, so we are called together here today to remember and decide. We remember today what for some was sacrifice, pain, loss. For some was the comradeship, the hopes, the fears, the evil that threatened, and the vehicle the victory that came. The value of remembering for some is strictly in telling the story, in sharing what is important to them, in working out the good, the bad, the ugly, the hurt, the happy and the sad, that one has encountered throughout their life. For others, it's a different issue. It's the lessons that were learned, involved in telling about the past. It's the education that it can give. For others, it's a matter of honor. It's a matter of respecting, of evoking emotions in a person. Laughter, joy, tears, peace, outrage, forgiveness, humility, determination. You see, remembering is good. It's a good thing. But today, primarily today, remembering is a call for a decision on your part. And without that decision, without deciding what we are called to do, remembering has little power or little purpose. And so today we're called to remember not only those who suffered and died, who sweat and sacrificed so much, but to remember the reason for which all honorable men and women have fought through all these centuries. Do you know why they fought? What's the reason that they fought? Namely, for the good of not only this nation, but the whole world. And most importantly, now we are called to choose. We are called to choose today, much the same as Joshua called those Israelites to choose. We are called to choose life or death, to choose the things of God or to choose the things of ourselves alone, the things of this world. And the message for us is the same exact message to the children of Israel. It's the same message to every veteran of every battle that this world's evil has ever fought. And every one of them can tell you to be a people who look out not just for themselves, a people who seek wealth instead of justice, not to be that, people who pursue happiness rather than the way of truth, who evaluate peace as a value over the truth of God, because people who do those things are lost. They're lost because they fail to remember. Don't be lost. I want you to remember. Ask yourself, what do these stones mean? Please, take time to remember. Let's pray. Lord God, we remember today how you treated us and our nation in the past, and how in faith so many gave themselves to resist evil in their day and to make this world a better place today. We pray today for your peace to not only be in us, but in the whole world. And all these things we ask in and through your Spirit, the Spirit of the one who entered, who rose that we might never die, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.